Thank you, everyone. There's an echo.
There's an echo. Reverb unit.
Hello?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yes.
We're good.
Thank you again. Please rise. Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Secretary Boozer, please read. Please read.
As we gather, we humbly wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of all people, our neighbors, and our country. All of this we ask.
We will do the roll call. Elizabeth?
Sure. Commissioner Biagini,
Present.
Commissioner Slame,
Here.
Commissioner Crutchlow,
Present.
Commissioner Bhatnagar is not in attendance.
Do we need a motion to excuse Commissioner Bhatnagar?
We do.
So moved. Are we expecting the commissioner?
Makes sense. So we'll do a quick wait and watch. And
Hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission subsequent hearing. Applicants will be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals. Comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of the public hearing. Right by the chair. Appeal of commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days.
Boozer?
Actually, I think you missed the part to ask about continuances or exceptions.
Reports for each of the items on the agenda are available from the Planning Division office on the Friday afternoon preceding the meeting. Request an item to be 1, continued without hearing, 2, withdrawn, or 3, taken out of order. Agenda. Seeing or don't have Commissioner Bhatnagar yet, applicants do have the option to continue if they want for any item that. Okay. We are,
I'm ready to make a motion. I have my hearing aids on.
Without him.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're still not taking the motion to excuse. Procedures for the consent calendar.
The procedure for the consent calendar is as follows. Consent calendar items may be enacted, approved, and adopted by one motion unless requested on a consent calendar item or would like the item to be heard on the regular agenda. Make this consent calendars as follows. 1A, Planning Commission meetings minutes for October 25th, 2000.
Thank you for good minutes, staff.
Thank you. You should be able to register your vote. I thought you all had connected. Okay, Commissioner Booza, would you like to register your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Crutchlow?
Move on to the public hearing presentations. This is the portion of the agenda where members, the commission has very limited ability to discuss items not on the agenda, and items may be referred to another agenda for discussion if.
No, we do not have any requests online or in the council chambers.
Okay, one item for tonight's public zoning code update. Staff, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you noted, this is the second hearing for the Planning Commission to hear the zoning code update. And hold on. What we talked about the last time around was the need for the update and how we were going to fix known problems, things like outdoor seating and entertainment permits, things like single family where side yard setbacks in the old update that we covered the last time around is how this zoning code update implements the general plan. So what we'll be talking about at tonight's hearing are the changes that we're not considering tonight, but we will be in the near future, probably in the next 3 months or so. And then the Planning Commission will be making their recommendation to the required by recent state law and the city's housing element. to go into commercial areas. This is AB 2011 and SB 6, standards and zones of our zoning code. The thing that's interesting, they're both subject to prevailing wage requirements. So a little bit different. It requires cities to relax ADU standards. One of the ones, SB 897 requires increased ADU height for ADUs on a story and a half. And if you want me to re-explain what a half story means, I can't. Or can't find room for an 800 square foot ADU on their property. Commercial projects if they partner with affordable housing developers. Yeah, emergency shelters are now allowed in 5 or 6 zoning districts throughout the city, and allowed by right, which is a requirement of state law. Also, the other change that this Department of Housing and Community Development requested was, this is changes from state law, sorry about that. Prohibition on requiring a public hearing for residential projects that only involve interior reconfigurations, which is something that the city had been doing through its architectural review process. So we have stricken that from our zoning code.
We lost,
John?
How did that happen?
Are we all getting this?
sorry for the interruption.
We can sit around the fire and do this the
Yes.
old-fashioned way.
You don't have a connection?
No, we don't have internet. It's the indicator's gone. It's gone. Yeah, gone. Granicus went down.
My screen wiped
Mine
out,
is still up.
Granicus.
and I thought it was me.
Yeah, I guess, yes, I am. It's still up on my side. Yes. You're down over there? Well, IT help is here. Why don't you let us know what's going on?
Let me make a quick announcement. We have audiences on Zoom and other social networks. Staff and commission are encountering an internet drop. Please bear with us as we resolve the issue. Thanks.
I'm afraid to do this, but I could pause the recording and see what happens.
Yeah, turn on our phones as hotspots.
It shouldn't.
Oh, you're in it.
Yeah.
We're in Granicus, and Granicus is dead.
Okay, so you're on your laptop. I'm on my iPad and it's not doing that. I'm fine on my iPad.
Okay. Well, no, I think it
For
finally
once
it
my world
resolved
is
it.
working and
It
nobody
resolved
else
it.
is. Oh, is it resolved, do you think?
I think so. Yeah, I'll join.
Thank you for your patience. Reporting a technical glitch, but we lost internet for a brief while. Thank you for your patience. Again, we just had a minor glitch at the Planning Commission at the venue here. We now have actually Yash Bhatnagar Commissioner join us. So we will acknowledge his arrival at 6:23 and proceed with staff presentation.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Yeah, staff is just getting back the presentation on Zoom, so.
Thank
just gonna
you.
take a couple seconds here.
Okay. Thank you, Madam. Thanks for the technical assistance. Again, changes resulting from state law. AB 2339 requires cities to consider or to allow emergency shelters in more zoning districts. And AB 916 does not allow cities to require a public hearing for residential projects that only involve interior reconfigurations. One of the main things that, one of the big changes that we've seen from changes to state law is that there's now a prohibition on requiring parking within a half mile of a major transit stop. And so the map that you see on the screen is our mapping of where those locations are within the city of Santa Clara. So mostly along El Camino, but also along Tasman Drive and Stevens Creek. So in response to the Department of Health through the zoning code update, including SROs, supportive housing, and what are called low barrier navigation centers, which are basically emergency shelters with services. And they have to be permitted in multifamily and mixed use zoning districts. So this is a variety of housing choices. So along with the changes that we've been required to make through the zoning code update by state law and by the Department of Housing and Community Development, we're also proposing general plan amendments that help implement some of the ideas that we want to have in the new zoning code update. So the three things that we're processing general plan amendments on is a removal of the limitations on manufacturing in 2 of our industrial districts, so that there can be a wider variety of businesses that can occupy these kinds of buildings. And this is also just a recognition that existing businesses within the area have historically been using the light industrial zoning district, so there are a lot of existing businesses within those areas that have manufacturing components. So this is partially to allow more flexibility, but also to recognize what's there now. A removal of a prohibition on medical facilities within the high-intensity office R&D district, which allows some high-tech medical manufacturers to have both manufacturing and outpatient surgery on the same site, which is, again, new and different in the way that businesses operate, something that an old zoning code wouldn't have anticipated. And to also modify our definition of floor area ratio, just to be clearer and more, have floor area ratio better represent what people see on the ground and above the ground. So it really measures mass, the building mass above grade, and excludes basements and below grade parking. So that's more of a just making the code easier to understand through a better representation of FAR. So zoning code map adoption. One of the things that we're going to have to do after adopting the code is adopt a map. And so we're constrained in a number of ways through state law that there is a requirement that the zoning and the general plan designations have to match, even for charter cities, which is SB 1333. This was not historically the case, and for a long time, the city had a zoning map that was not at all consistent with the general plan map, and this is what we're finally addressing after having our general plan for 13 years. For parcels that are inconsistent in terms of their zoning and GP designation, the higher density controls, and we're going to have to adopt, if it's a higher density zoning designation than our general plan anticipated, we're going to have to change our general plan to recognize that. So there's going to be a couple of steps in getting a zoning map together, and some of it is going to be creating a general plan map that represents all of the requirements of state law and what our existing zonings are. So we also have to recognize existing land uses with our general plan designations. We have some areas of the city where we have things like duplexes that are general plan for single family. And in those cases, we don't want to constrain or make housing resources like duplexes something that are legal non-conforming. They should be fully legal, have the ability to expand according to the zoning code without any sort of intervening problems. So reconcile existing zoning and GP, but also match existing land uses, and then finally rezone properties with new zoning districts that match the general plan designation. So we will have a period of time after the zoning code's adopted where we're getting our general plan and zoning maps together. And those, we're anticipating that it should be about 3 months before we come back to Planning Commission for a zoning map adoption. So maybe February or March of 2024. So we'll be doing the text amendments and the code. You'll be recommending on those tonight. Council should be taking them up in December, and the map adoption is early next year. So one of the things that we're doing with this code adoption is specifying what articles of the zoning code are going to be in effect. And so the things that are going to be in effect are everything that's not related to the zoning map adoption, so specifically zones. And that's really Article 2 of our zoning code. Articles 1 through 8, except for Article 2, are about the processes and standards for specific land uses, how we look at landscaping, what our definitions are. Those we're proposing to have the Planning Commission recommend the council, direct staff to implement all of that. And those things, will allow the city to do things like have the minor use permit process, allow outdoor seating and entertainment permits in a simplified way, review parking for new developments with the streamlined parking requirements, and to implement the single-family residential code changes that we're proposing, including side yard setbacks by right, or reduce side yard setbacks by right, and also expanding the amount of area people can add if they have a one-car garage. So doing that now, and then the zoning map comes after that, and Article 2 gets adopted or gets implemented at that time. One thing that we need to follow up on are short-term rentals. And since we got a comment from a citizen who's concerned about how short-term rentals are going to be regulated, one of the things that we've changed in our zoning code provisions is to allow unhosted rentals, changing the definition of what a hosted rental is. And the main thing here is that hosted rentals are allowed on a year-round basis, but a hosted rental is where the part of, or where the unit that's being rented is where the host lives. So if you own a home and are renting out a room in your home, you can do that, and you're there, you can do it all year round. But unhosted rentals where the host isn't present are only allowed 90 days per year. And all ADUs are considered unhosted, whether or not they're on the same property where the host lives. And to this end, one of the things that the city has to do is get together a monitoring and compliance program for short-term rentals. So staff's recommending a 9-month deferral of the short-term rental provisions to put those into place. And Xander's going to present all of the recent changes that are in this November draft.
Right, the version of the zoning ordinance you're being asked to, go back, not yet. The version of the zoning ordinance you're asked to make a recommendation on is dated November 2023. When the packets went out at the end of last week, you may have received a link to the slightly older October 2023 version. Yesterday, Elizabeth emailed all of you to give you the link to the November version, and the November version is available on the website and in the packet. But in case you only looked at the October version, or for the benefit of any members of the public that only looked at the October version, I just wanted to highlight what the differences are. And you've already heard John talk about a couple of these. Earlier you heard John talk, I haven't actually gotten to those points yet. Earlier you heard John talk about the floor area ratio. That's something that's unique to the November version. We're now considering whatever is above ground level to be counted towards floor area ratio, whether it's habitable space or just parking. It's a control on massing, and so it shouldn't matter what kind of mass we're talking about. Mass is mass under the new code. He also mentioned that we further clarified the exemption for AB 2097. That's where there's no parking allowed near transit. A few spots in the October version, we hadn't fully integrated that. Now we've tightened that language in the November version. And as he mentioned, we added emergency shelters to light industrial zones. Actually, it was in response to HCD's request in the review of our housing element. We were already going to allow them in multifamily residential zones and some of the commercial zones. Now we'll be adding light industrial to the list. A few things he didn't mention. First, we are putting in a clear exemption of the downtown precise plan from the bulk of the standards in the new zoning ordinance. You recommended approval of the downtown precise plan at the last meeting. The consequence of adopting one law and then adopting a second law is anywhere the second law conflicts with the first law, it overwrites the first law. And since you probably didn't want the downtown precise plan to be largely overwritten by adopting the zoning ordinance, we put in some clarifying language that says this doesn't apply to the downtown precise plan in a variety of places. For instance, the downtown precise plan has its own sign standards, but we have a whole chapter of sign standards in the new code. So we've added a line, this doesn't apply to the downtown precise plan. There are a variety of spots like that. I will confess we might not have caught all of them yet, but we will catch them all by council. Similarly, there's a minor modification process that we've preserved from the old code that we're putting into the new code. The zoning administrator can make certain changes to standards. But the downtown precise plan has its own precise process for deviation from standards. You know, if they don't want you to go beyond X percent, you know, like 10% instead of 25%. So we added language clarifying that the minor modifications don't apply to downtown. Again, as John mentioned, we're postponing regulations on occupancy limits to dwellings. In earlier drafts, we looked at the number of occupants in a dwelling once you exceeded a housekeeping unit, but at the direction of the city manager and the city attorney, we are putting that on hold until we have time to do some more research on it. There were still some references to that in the October draft. They've been removed in the November draft. We are still going to require that all new housing elements have a 25% shared common space. So the hope is we're not going to have, you know, partitions and bunk beds in units. You've got to have at least a living room and a dining room. We've also put in better consistency with our REACH code. You all saw the REACH code get adopted last year. When we started drafting this zoning ordinance, we didn't have a REACH code. So our consultants came up with basically a separate set of EV parking standards, which were actually more lax than what the REACH code requires. So now the new version simply refers to the REACH code for EV parking spaces. Additional adjustments to the sign ordinance. So we had to put in a bunch of changes here. One of them related to related city place. Some of you may have been on the commission, no. Included a huge exception to our prohibition on billboards. Our city code currently says billboards are a blight on the community wherever they're located, and we want to reduce the number as much as possible forevermore. Then City Place came along and we said, oh, but actually facing Tasman Drive and the stadium, some electronic billboards may actually add something to the area. And so we created an express exemption for City Place facing Tasman and also for some signs facing inward towards the City Place development. We are now readopting our sign ordinance, including a lot of the findings about how billboards are generally ugly, but we couldn't just paste the exact same language because then we would undo City Place. So I had to add in a bunch of language explaining that with the exception of City Place, we're still committed to getting rid of billboards. There were some other minor tweaks to the sign ordinance. Finally, we have a new version of the ADU ordinance. It largely just responds to a lot of HCD's comments. Just like the housing element, we had to submit our ADU ordinance to HCD. And even though there's no certification process, we would still like them to be happy with our ADU ordinance, just like we'd like them to be happy with the housing element. One of the main changes they wanted was, our ADU ordinance said you can have one detached and one attached accessory dwelling unit. They wanted also for us to add in a line that says, and you could have one converted ADU, where you take an area of your house that's not currently an ADU, make it into an ADU, and also have a detached ADU, and also have an attached JADU. I know, it's a lot of ADUs. That is the change they asked for. They also asked us to lower the minimum size to 150 square feet. They also asked us to remove some subjective language related to the placement of kitchens in JADUs, about how we wanted to have the discretion to say this is a reasonable size of a kitchen. They don't want that. Anyway, I promised John I'd be concise. I have not been, I apologize. But I think that is the bulk of the substantive changes from the October draft, in case you only read the October draft.
So next steps. So we're having the recommendation hearing tonight, November 2023. Council will be taking this up on December 19th. we should be doing outreach early next year on the map itself, and hopefully having adoption hearings sometime in the March timeframe. So you'll be seeing this again in about 3 months, so maybe February. So with that, I'll open it up to questions and answers from the Planning Commission.
We have a lot. Okay, who wants to go first, though? Commissioner Salem.
When you said that they're going to waive front setbacks, at what distance does that actually cut off? Because I would assume sidewalks and utility easements and things are not included in the exemption.
Correct. So the front setback could potentially be waived entirely. So the accessory dwelling unit could be sitting at the front property line, but yeah, obviously would not involve sidewalks or anything like that. So up to the private property line.
But only if it would be necessary to fit an 800 square foot unit on the lot. If there's a way to fit it without going right up to the front property line, we could still say no.
And so, and we have the provision for two-story accessory dwelling units. So more than most cities, we have flexibility.
So we have the possibility of a 19th Street style architecture where, you know, it's just street, sidewalk, house for low depth lots.
Like a zero setback.
Yeah, zero setback.
That is what state law provides for. My hope is that we could push back on that. It would be a small lot where that would be mandatory.
And yeah, I think that there are lots of other ways of doing it, including attached accessory dwelling units. So I would think that that's a very rare occurrence.
Okay.
Commissioner Salem, are you done?
I'll save another one for later.
Okay.
Pass it
we'll be
around.
waiting.
I got a question, a real quick one here. Regarding the medical buildings and using it during places that you could have manufacturing along with medical offices, medical buildings, right in the same complex. Did you say manufacturing or just like R&D or offices? Because manufacturing is could get kind of dangerous and could be chemicals and all this other stuff. So that's what I'm kind of wondering.
This provision would allow medical facilities in the high-intensity office district, and it's related to companies that are doing manufacturing of surgical devices.
Okay, so we already have that.
Right, exactly.
Before you know it, in Lafayette, we already have a surgical unit center. Actually, we have 2 places in Lafayette.
Right, so this allows companies to combine their device manufacturing with outpatient surgery, so they can do
Right.
both on the same site.
Right, okay, now you clarified it, that makes more sense, thank you.
I got a quick question about the deadline for this. You said we were going to talk about it and vote on it in February. But is there a hard deadline that we have to have this all done?
For the map, no, this is something that we're just trying to make the zoning code update available as soon as possible and implement it as soon as possible.
And I just wanted to clarify, so tonight is certainly the adoption, the recommendation of the zoning code. And what can be implemented once this zoning code is in effect is the bulk of the code, except for things related to districts, because we actually have to apply them to a map. And that takes a separate action. So that's the map that John Davidson's referring to that we're going to bring forward for you. But the actual code, the language in the document, that is what we're asking for the recommendation to bring forward to City Council. Just when somebody comes and says, hey, did you change the color on my map? We first have to create the districts that don't even exist. Then we have to apply them. So the map adoption is taking the new districts that we're creating and applying them to the map itself. So that's part two, but it's been such a lift, as you know, to bring forward just the changes to the zoning code, create these new districts. That's part one. And then part two, a lot of this will be able to be implemented, but when we're actually changing zoning districts, that's what we'll need the map for.
Okay, thank you. There was a comment about the ADU minimum space would be now 100 square feet. Can you elaborate on that?
150 square feet is the minimum space allowed for an efficiency unit under state law. Previously, we'd had it at 220 square feet.
Maybe I'm wrong here, and please, you're the expert on this. I thought in an emergency shelter, the minimum was 200 per person.
I'm not an expert on emergency shelter space. I just know you can build an ADU that's only 150 square feet now.
Okay, because that seems like a contradiction to me, but I could see somebody potentially saying, well, wait a minute, how come you say this here for emergency shelter, but then ADU has to be blah, 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 and, it just opens up a can of worms that doesn't necessarily need to be that way to begin with. So it's a minor point, but I just think it's one that's a technicality that can bite us.
Just to clarify, we're talking emergency shelters. It's
Anybody else has a final question?
okay. Commissioner Bhatnagar and then Commissioner Biagini.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, let me apologize for my tardiness. FAR, the floor area ratio, so I'll ask maybe 3 questions, but one by one. The Santa Clara floor area ratio is set at about 40%, where a number of our neighboring cities make it at 45%.
Coverage, which describes how much of the lot is occupied by a building.
Yes.
And for single family, yes, we're at 40%. And I don't know what other cities are at.
Okay.
But what we're talking about tonight is floor area ratio, which is the ratio between the area of the building and the area of the lot. So if it's a 2-story building and each ratio is 0.5, but if it was lot coverage, it would only be 25%.
Okay.
So floor area ratio is really to measure the bulk of a building, like Sandra was saying.
Right, understood. And we are saying that if you...
It shouldn't. It's only enclosed space.
Only enclosed space. Okay. So you clarified my question. Okay, I'm clear. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Biagini.
I had a question. Developments happen, and I'm looking at the zoning code changes required by, I think that's the key, required by recent state legislation that showed that's a large part of El Camino Real. Yeah, all those blue circles are what we're talking about. So then, Bill 2334, if somewhere in those blue circles you had a big apartment building or a senior housing complex, the developer.
In addition to that, no parking required for affordable housing projects, so that's anywhere in the city.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to just,
Right.
driving, affordable housing may not be able to afford vehicles, and that's what transit is for. But a residential building, I think we're going to get quite a lot of excitement about that if some apartment, the old Moonlight Shopping Center just before that, those, and not having parking, or even some of the apartment buildings that are coming up along, anybody in the city or anybody on a commission, it's state law, and that's how it is. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I do want to clarify, because we do focus on housing, because so much legislation has been about housing.
Right.
But
Speaking to a developer today, she said that they are guided by market forces and that
Were to come before the city with this development, nice, big, beautiful development, and then they turn around and say, but we're not going to have any parking.
clarify, though, I think the point is that even if we have a full chamber, we could never deny a project based
Oh,
on parking.
I
Okay.
completely
Just
understand that, but
clarifying that.
I'm all, that's creating a nightmare. It's outside of our hands. All right, so that aside, I want to go to this letter that we received because I'm not sure how it applies. The letter from the that we got, a couple of bullets talk about the issues that could be involved with ADUs, and are we ending up with a hostel or motel, blah, blah. But the last one talks about, I don't know what that means or how that fits in, because I certainly don't know what the San Mateo language is. Is that something that, on Google, I see you over there, but I'm wondering if there is some good language in there that we might be able to use.
Yeah, so Xander's term rentals as that way.
San Mateo flat out prohibits short-term rentals and ADUs. I couldn't tell you right on the spot whether that's legal or not, but that is what they do. They prohibit it
Well,
entirely.
yeah, I guess I'm kind of hoping in the future if somebody wants about what neighboring cities are doing. In any event, I understand there's a monitoring compliance coming up, and that's ADUs. Is that what this monitoring compliance issue was about?
The monitoring compliers, in order to come into compliance, because they'll need to register their properties with the city as short-term rental, and then get into compliance, as well as we recognize that this is a lot of work for city staff to adjust. There are third parties who've gotten very sophisticated at being able to find out when people. It's also to communicate to property owners so they're not surprised by this new law that's going to affect how
A neighbor could deal with the situation out of compliance would be if they knew about it and if they complained. Time and
individuals will
education
need
to know what
to
it's about.
register.
How many zoning districts?
To
I think it's about 15. We're 15 or 20 where we have residential, commercial, industrial.
And we have the Lawrence Station
And the Lawrence, you're right, we also have
that are actually specific plans, so would related be a district?
master.
They're planned development, and we are in master community. And so for their massive development, they've got a whole separate.
Unique, and it's not a specific land because?
No, it is a specific plan, and it is included in the zoning code, but.
Yeah, that's what, called out, that specific plan actually called out as a district in our zoning ordinance with its actual,
There's everything in the city, then, yeah, perhaps not having a separate line for City Place, was something we could have thought of.
Okay.
But, let's have a specific plan for one developer. The master community plan, I think, is a better vehicle. That's why we did it that way.
Got it. And so the downtown is an actual district. Is it under the central business area? Or is downtown specific plan?
The downtown is sorry, do you want to take it?
Yeah, just that the downtown precise plan
Yeah.
is going to be specifically, or that area is going to be specifically excluded from the zoning map and have standards that are applied separately through the downtown precise plan.
Okay. You see where I'm getting with already the different locations for people to go to. So ideally, and we talked about this when we were doing the study session, consolidate or at least make sure they're all connected links, because a member of public will need to cross-verify 3, 4 when they come in the hundreds of people, when the chambers get filled, because they have to go to all these locations, and neither would the applicant or the developer actually know the other potential,
But all of those areas you just listed are in the code. Lawrence, downtown. Downtown currently is just a placeholder. It says
Yeah.
insert downtown form-based code here. But
Because it hasn't been adopted yet.
yeah,
But it's only the form-based code I see. I don't see, is that specifically what it's
Yes,
called
yes.
out?
The form-based
Oh, okay.
code
The
will
zoning
be the
standards.
zoning standards that
Got it.
apply to the precise plan once the council officially adopts them.
Okay.
Should they adopt them.
Okay, thank you for that additional clarification. That was for my own adding clarity. But I see it allowed by right in almost all except, industrial. Light industrial, which is very surprising and odd, but I won't take complaint. But I see it allowed by right in all of those areas. Is there a way that we can actually see those projects come to us? And why are they going without any kind of minor, even a minor or a major use permit in those
the
areas?
simple answer is yes. You just change the chart so it's a C instead of a P.
interested in data centers that are in the low intensity, which was the clarification I wanted to go into, in the low intensity section 18.16.010, purpose of office and industrial zones. The low intensity does not declare it to be only ancillary to office and research. It assumes that data centers could be a standalone service. Only the ancillary data centers to the primary use, which is the high-intensity office research, will be allowed. So that I can sense and then for the light industrial zone, it just gives a blanket, including manufacturing and wholesales, as well as, I mean, of course, office in this case, but it gives that full right, permitted right. It is not in the heavy industrial zone, which was interesting. I can understand from the length fall into that category, but it'll be interesting to see from a perspective of generators how we would consider them not being hazardous or noxious. But those were my comments on data centers. Could you answer the first one, why it's allowed by right?
Yeah, and so again, the data centers in the high-intensity office district be ancillary. And so that's been reflected in the zoning code. And, you know, as Xander was saying, if the Planning Commission feels like it's more appropriate to apply that same standard to the low-intensity office district, that's a reasonable change to request. We were simply going through our general plan and making sure that our zoning code reflected and implemented the general plan, and it wasn't there.
Because what I'm curious is, other than in the low industrial, which technically along with if the zoning ordinance is the way it is written here, is centered to be allowed by right under the circumstance, or would they be considered separate or one project?
Yeah, I think that the general plan did a data center and a primary use like an office building.
Would be necessary to go.
What's an ancillary data center?
I have no idea. I'm assuming that there's a massive.
Have a lot of security on site for their data, and that is something that.
Let's define this, because I work in high tech and I understand what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense, because I know, let's say there's a very large company that does firewalls and stuff like that in our city, and I know that they have a ton of servers. Electricity and other things that they consume is not as compared to, let's say, a building that's just a data center. Very, very different. And so I think that maybe the way to define this is like, hey, if you're starting to creep into having more and more rooms become server rooms, ancillary data center is coming from?
I think you're speaking to a concern you have about like the vagueness, I apologize, of ancillary. Yeah. I don't have a good standard off the top of my head of what ancillary should be, and if there's something that the Planning Commission thinks is a good threshold.
In terms of square feet and how much electricity and stuff you're using. For example, if I'm a GPU manufacturer, we know a few of them here, I won't mention them, but if I have a small room, I can actually pump through a lot of electricity because of things that I'm doing, like Bitcoin mining or whatever. So it is a function of a couple things, but this is probably where, I'm sorry, several aspects of this that should be considered when looking at what should be considered a data center. And maybe we can use some other terminology, but those thresholds are very important, and maybe that's where we should take a look at how we define what's going on, because if they do creep, like you said, oh, I got an office here, that's okay. Yeah, I got 2 people in here. Nobody ever shows up, but the rest of it's all servers. So we just thought we were doing what was allowed and that it was okay. And I get it, but if you're going to start using a lot of electricity, yeah, we want to be able to look at that and consider that in the overall scheme of things in Santa Clara.
And Santa Clara is going to continue to grow, but I also, I will come to you, Commissioner. NVIDIA is, and is that a business support center? I mean, what's the classification of tech-based companies versus regular business supports? Just because we will continue to see the growth of tech companies, which will align with the data center ancillary, and then definitely a threshold. But
Just help me by contrasting the two things you're talking about. I heard business support center, and what was the second thing?
Do we have an actual definition for where tech parks would go, like the large campuses of NVIDIA, ServiceNow? I mean, I'm sure there's a dime a dozen of those large Bloom Energies.
So
Ambulance services, banks and financial establishments, I get that. And then again, there's another banks and financial establishments standalone ATM, so general and ATM is broken. And then there's a general category of business support centers.
right.
And then there's a call center, and then there's data centers.
Okay.
And that's it in that category of parks and tech,
Okay.
Purely tech, which would have, in my mind, the ancillary data center as an integrated tech park.
You could, but you could have retail that says, oh, by the way, Santa Clara happens to be great, so we're going to put a lot of our computers in our particular department store in Santa Clara in the back.
So, yeah, and
So-
Amazon warehouses, which could be data center, fresh produce and wine.
Yep.
But
But I think that being able to define, okay, we don't care what you call it, but here's the thresholds.
yes,
We want to know, and we want to make sure that we're not going over that. That's really where we're trying to drive it.
yes,
Right.
yeah. Under CUP for data centers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Chirukuru, because we don't have a definition of what business support center is, and I think that
That's what I was saying.
we either have to remove it or we have to define it.
Exactly.
And because when you were asking where do tech offices, that is, so your recommendation to staff could be, were you about to
Well,
step
I
in?
may have found the definition.
Oh, great.
Business support service center. Commercial establishment that provides services to other businesses, including maintenance, repair and service, testing,
completely
rent, processing, and photo finishing, graphic design services. You don't think that's a bit?
No,
building-
it's what the challenge, I think it's a small error, but I'm glad we caught it. In the table, we call it business support center,
service.
and we forget the service.
Yeah,
So if you do a control F, look for the definition,
there isn't.
we should just add the word service to the table, like business support service center.
Mailing and mailboxes.
But want to clarify the definition to either call out tech innovation different from an Amazon.
Right, I mean, so I think, again, it's kind of like saying I'm going to buy a car, right? And in fact, we were just talking about cars and like, okay, one engine on one model is
Teslas.
500 in their research. It's not like they're a data center providing services to other people, but just their testing facilities and such are huge. And, it eats up a lot of electricity. So when we go into this, I think, yeah, the definitions need to have a function of existence that we have said, but by your usage, we need to know about it so that when we're, as Planning Commission, reviewing permits and stuff like that, we should go ahead and be able to have that as part of the presentation and say, okay, yeah, well, now you're going to use 3% of our electricity in Santa Clara. We don't necessarily want that. So it's all very confusing, but maybe we should have a separate discussion.
Care of some of those
Yes.
caveats on the electricity usage. The specific project will give that scope to get more clarity. But where I'm headed is for staff to add the clarity in the definitions of what constitutes a business thing that's purely so technical, like a technology park, which would be like almost a zone in my mind, where we would have a mothership of tech companies.
This is
No, it won't count.
Kinko's, this is,
Exactly.
this
It's
is
a separate
very
category.
UPS store, this is, so
USPS,
Yeah,
UPS.
it is, it's also permitted, right? We've decided to call it something unique versus just calling it a commercial establishment because it's providing a supportive service to our commercial environment. But I think, what was really missing is the word service from use permit,
That's
being concerned
different,
about
yes.
power, all of that. But I just
you-
didn't want to mix them both up.
Could you
because they're
also then
confusing.
add a tech park definition is what I'm going
Right,
with.
and maybe what we do is we just add a little bit more language to the high-intensity office general plan or zoning designation to explain
Yes.
that it's more of a technology park.
I could
type
see like an
designation.
Apple, those would be, of course, they would be massive projects, so we would see it in one way or another, but I don't want that to, again, go by right.
A section that talks all about ancillary regulations. The catch is it doesn't address what an ancillary data center is. It's 1816-040, and it talks about what commercial ancillary uses are, and there it says not more than 10% of the gross square floor area. Also talks about get to
Data.
ancillary uses in the high-intensity office research and development zone. One of them is data centers, and we don't have a standard. So I hear that you would like a standard for what constitutes ancillary uses in high-intensity office research and development, ancillary determination.
So you would have either, well, it could be and, it doesn't have to be either or. It would be the square footage or percentage of square footage. You could have a threshold of a square footage, it doesn't matter, or a percentage of the square footage, 10%, 15%, and the electric.
Or, not and.
When you say or for.
I use 5% of the space, and I use a ton of electricity.
No, I separated the or for the square footage or threshold and electrical
Okay.
utilization.
I'm slow, but I get there.
It's okay. I'm just too fast. So, okay, now I think I've riled everybody up enough. Okay, we'll have one more, and I probably will close my comments there, unless Commissioner. Okay. So on the signage, thank you again. I saw the signage, very detailed. I wanted to clarify, we just adopted, is there still clarity that signage along 101 would be restricted? I didn't see that really come through in the verbiage. I could be off.
Are you
Can
talking
you
about
help clarify?
billboards?
Signage along 101,
So you're talking billboards?
billboards.
I mean,
I'm seeing signs.
Our current limitation continues to apply, so you cannot install a new billboard anywhere in the city except City Place unless you simultaneously remove 3 other billboard faces. Is there a absolute prohibition on them going in on 101 for the new one that replaces the 3 old? I don't think so, because I think we've
So,
approved a couple recently.
How many do we have altogether in the city? What, about 5 or 6 of them?
No, several dozen.
I mean,
Like,
I counted
Third-
14 the other day.
that's it?
the large,
Oh, strike that. There are 14.
in the El Camino, we have about, what, 3 or 4 of them? 3? Yeah. And the El Camino, they're small. My concern with the billboard is that the new way they're doing it now is electronic.
Yes.
And the way that we're building down the El Camino, the lights are going to be so bright that it's going to probably interfere with the homes. I know that for certain approaches on the airports, they don't want high, density billboards because of the.
Well, I think even when you're driving, it's very much a distraction.
Yeah, there's one like that on
101 by
border side,
Lysanka.
Laurelwood and stuff
Yeah.
like that. There's one.
especially in the night
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
They're
safe
awful.
driving. But
And so you could
Anyway.
have just 2 billboards and you could have, say, 20 clients.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's
They're
okay if you say, okay,
immensely-
sure, I'm going to cut down the amount of billboards, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to go electronic and I'm going to have 20 clients. I can sit at home and change the ads. I don't even have to send anybody out there to strip down the
So we'll
things.
add a minimum, like if you use 12 volts and
Right.
3 amps, and any more than
Dimming
that,
lights,
can't do it.
dimming lights.
We do actually condition them when we approve a new one. And one of the considerations is brightness, absolutely.
Well,
There's also
you
state
actually-
regulations regulating
You actually
brightness.
can convert one to not approve one, but actually you can convert one that is not electronic, convert it into
Yes.
electronic.
Oh, that's the only thing that happens now.
Yeah,
They take down
right.
static ones and they put up electronic
right,
ones.
right.
But you hit the nail on the head. They're immensely more profitable than a
Yeah,
static one
that's-
is, of course.
yeah, any way you
Of
can
course,
make
but
money.
we limit it as we can. We impose conditions, and every time we approve a new one, they take down 3 others. And soon there won't be any more to take down except City Place, which will look like.
Can I say something in the data center before it gets cold? I think most of the problems we were talking about, with concern the citizens,
On the
the
page.
gigantic, the monstrosities of the data centers and the proximity to the residential areas. I would like to see something put in there, like at least a mile or 2 miles away from residential areas being constructed, any type of data centers. Because you can see that once, right there off of that Main and Jackson Street, that you can see right there across the railroad tracks, that thing is a monstrosity, and you're only not even a quarter mile away from homes, an eighth of a mile, I would say. And there's another one too that they're building, what is it, on Walsh, that's right against senior housing and also some condominiums. So this, you know, we have this set a limit. I mean, I think we got too many of them already. I'm against going any more into this data center stuff. But anyway, set a limit at least. If anything, it's just already in the projects at least a couple miles away or a mile away from any residential areas.
The one thing I do want to bring up is, as a lot of North Santa Clara has changed to specific plans, we have a lot of new residential in North Santa Clara that is also in areas that would be certainly within 2 miles. So I'm just saying that would maybe be essentially not quite a prohibition, but it's going to make it almost impossible for people to build.
Well, nothing's
Which
impossible.
may be your-
I don't want to hear any, I hate hearing impossible.
Except when it comes
Doesn't
to Great
exist.
America.
You know, and previously, we had already discussed about even looking at the potential of saying, hey, let's choose an area that's the data center park, life's good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, I apologize for a data center study group. We should do this, and I think this will help a lot.
So there's 2 areas that the reason, and thank you for pointing the billboard, but I originally looked at it from the freeway signs. So freeway signs and I think freeway, and that talks about the 101, signs along 101. And that was clear that up to 30 feet height, you know, no backlit or illuminating. That is what I had in my mind, because one of the key criteria in that was that the property primary use are the only ones who can actually have a sign on the property itself.
Oh,
Okay, now I hit a bit.
on-site signs.
On-site.
Yeah, those are not billboards, yeah.
No, that's
Signs
why it was-
advertising the,
Again, that's where you drew my attention to be more restricted. So basically, I see that it's scored out, but the existing ones can come back, and we don't have, I don't know if I've read it thoroughly enough, either we have an ability to ask them to move it by certain feet away from and reduce the height such that the direct hit on a transit, on a driver, existing sign along freeway, and I would call out a special caveat to 101. Sorry, that was too many words. But with that, I will now go to Commissioner Slim.
So this is my usual, I have an actual real-world example that I'd like to explore. I'm aware of a development that is longstanding that added a family room unpermitted. The home was sold. Now we have a new owner that's doing some pretty extensive remodeling, again, without permits. And the ADU has been reintegrated into the home itself. Since this ADU was never permitted, attached or not.
it went off the rail when you said unpermitted. Are you telling me they are currently constructing without permits?
Yes.
Then we will send out code enforcement tomorrow.
Oh, you would think that we would do that, but this has been in process a good probably 3 weeks now, and I don't think. Oh my gosh.
Or at least rip open the wall so the inspectors can see it.
Yeah, we might want to light a fire then under the
I
inspector to
mean, the
go out and
fact
see
that
it.
they're doing it doesn't mean it's going to stay there.
Okay.
Now, yeah, there is a wrinkle in the ADU law saying you are not required to correct non-conforming property conditions in order to add an ADU. Not required to bring any legal non-conforming property into compliance as a condition of adding an ADU. So if you have a legal non-conforming site, you know, it didn't fit with the setbacks because it was built before the zoning ordinance, whatever, you can put in an ADU. Legal or illegal, unless it would be necessary for building this ADU. So their position, and unfortunately our current draft of our ADU ordinance, is you're not required to correct an illegal condition on your property and pursue administrative penalties, pursue civil penalties, pursue criminal penalties for them violating blatantly the building code. And I will make a phone call tomorrow and find out whether any of those things will happen. But can they apply also, hey, on the backside of the property, I'd like to every day that they're in violation of the building code.
Wow.
Every day is a new violation. Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, it's a
Yeah,
mixed
well, if you
bag,
want to find
but
them, they're right next door to me, so.
I trust I trust somebody on your block.
ADUs or remodeling, so.
We'll
it's-
send this link to code enforcement.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. I just wanted to know whether or not the fact that some of this was grandfathered, like the permit for a family room addition was in 1995, but that was turned into an ADU and used as an ADU for 20-some plus years.
So does it retain its ADU status?
I
See,
don't
you got
know.
me worked up because you said unpermitted.
Yeah.
But before that, you said the ADU, there was an ADU,
Well,
because if it was back in 95, that was before ADUs were
Probably.
allowed, so it would
So
have just
there's
been an
probably-
expansion of the house, so it wouldn't be characterized an ADU.
interesting.
So leaving aside the permit mess, they'll need to fix that. It doesn't sound like there's an ADU on the lot currently, so they can probably add one or even two.
Well, yeah, if it gets converted back into the base of the house, and there would, okay, so it's kind of grandfathered in. I'm not trying to stir up hate and problems for anybody. I just wanted to
Trying to stir up
understand.
something.
I just wanted to understand whether if an ADU is reintegrated into the base of the home, and it was never recognized to be an ADU, then you can add an ADU additional, so you're basically double dipping on the amount of square footage for a second ADU.
One into an attached ADU and then add a detached ADU legally. They can also convert existing space into an ADU. So if it wasn't legalized as an ADU previously, that can be their converted ADU and then add a
Wow.
detached one and maybe a JADU. As
Hope you have security.
Oh, boy.
Put those security cameras.
Yeah, put the cameras out.
Okay,
The only
moving
thing I
on.
was wondering was, are you concerned about number of kitchens or anything like that that would come with an ADU that was being sort of converted back into the main building?
Yeah, I think the kitchen of the ADU was removed in favor of
Yeah,
returning it to, it was recognized as an ADU for 20 years. It never existed. Got it. Interesting. I love the law. Thank you. But we should, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last question, unless Commissioner Wang.
Oh,
Hold on, Commissioner Wang.
sorry. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a very quick question about the ADU. For attached, it's a two-story, 25 feet height. So why the detached, it's a 1.5 story? Yeah.
So the idea of a half story is just to discuss, the walls at the edges are only 4 feet high, and the way that you create additional space is to use a bunch of dormers. So really, it's this story and a half idea a bit by using a half story instead of a full story, which could be a flat roof and very bulky. So that's the main differentiation.
Okay.
And the 25 feet for the ever is lower. HCD has interpreted that as meaning 25 feet or the allowable height for the existing dwelling, whichever is lower. We have simply made it 25 feet for attached.
Okay, thank you.
Prohibition requiring public hearing for residential projects for inside the homes. Now, that kind of, I was thinking about that. There, if you want to turn, and then on top of that, you want to add an ADU or two ADUs that will comply. So before you know it, you're going to have like about a 9-bedroom situation. And my thing is, basically, you're turning into a motel next door to you. I think it should be allowed for any of the residents to, make some, people that live around there to make comments on that. Because before you know it, not only that, you're going to have parking problems down the street. You're destroying a neighborhood. My main concern is they're trying to bypass it. It's destroying a lot of the single-family homes, a lot of the residential areas, and it's just completely destroying don't encroach it in the single-family homes. And this is something that,
And they're using it as residential. And then they said, well, I'm going to move.
And start renting it out, but then they can have ADUs, full-time. So what you're doing is having a boarding house.
An existing dwelling to add up to 2 bedrooms. And then you'd have a right to add an ADU.
Or 2 ADUs.
Or 2 ADUs.
Or 2 ADUs.
Or 2 ADUs.
And you live in there, you have a boarding house.
Any larger. And if you did, you'd need a public hearing. Then this just
without
keeps us.
making my second part of the question, which I said, do you know any cities that are suing the state, have a blanket thing and saying, you know what, we're going to roll over and say, whatever your state wants, we're going to do it. And if it affects a lot of our citizens in the area,
We can recommend anything we want to the city council.
You got it.
Yeah.
Tall.
I know staff had additional clarifications on the electronic fences, and it's
To speak to the issue, we are including additional land. So pass get advisories or SEPTED of our police. We wanted to make sure that people recognize that intervention or from the police department. And yeah, if
member of public. The additional clarification, I would say, from their larceny, property damage, fire.
environmental design or not.
Okay,
Environmental design.
I see. Okay, thank you for that addition. Now open for public comments.
And I'll make this very brief, but certainly I am here to request that you do approve. Here as a handout, just to point out, just the statistics, is larceny and theft. This is what this technology prevents. Reduced, or rather reduced by electrified security fencing. Again, when you add those 3 categories, is a higher incidence of property crime than the state average. So there certainly is a need for this. As we take a look at this, well, if you think about it, this page 1, this is what impacts identity, okay, of a city, is crime and goals and policy, safety and security, as well as just safe and secure environment for people and businesses and so forth. Resolution, which is really just kind of more some technical clarifications. And I won't speak for him, but he seemed to be somewhat agreeable that these were and would not be a visual impact to the city. Again, I asked, and my final comment is that I ask for all of you to weigh the priorities of the proven technology around the Bay Area that's being utilized by other cities. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Any other comments from members of public online?
Zoom, and nobody else in the council chambers, so there are no other public comments.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comments, should we have a motion to close?
Would you like
Okay.
us to re-announce it?
On Zoom or other electronic devices, links to
Please. And Commissioner Salam? It's okay. Commissioner Botnagar?
now we'll move to commission deliberation. Any questions, thoughts, additional?
Got a question. There's 2,
Wait, we closed public comment. Did we want to have the gentleman?
I can ask him a question.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. On your pictures right here, it looks like 2 fences on United Rental, the first picture. Is that the way that you're proposing on doing this? Putting a fence first, and then behind that,
It's behind a fence, and that is to prevent inadvertent access to the actual security fence itself.
okay, and I don't see any,
Warning signage, which are posted.
okay.
That is required. That is, should be there, they're there on the
Yeah,
photos.
there can be a little bit bigger, probably will scare people away if you put it a little, in case if somebody doesn't read that is trying to break in.
Very valid question. That was a Civil Code Section 835, is that there be an international symbol for shock. It's a hand, it's a silhouette of a hand, and that's required on all the signage. And also, its state law requires at a minimum bilingual, okay, English and Spanish.
I'm concerned about this, and I know the last time you were here, I thank you for coming back, but my concern falls under the following. Company in the light industrial area that never had a theft, had no interest in building an electric fence, and they were very close to the place that wanted one. So I recognize, and it talks about larceny and theft, and I have no doubt that that's a big problem, but I don't know if putting an elected in this report, and if I'm wrong, I hope somebody will tell me, is just for businesses like what are in your picture. I mean, I'm thinking of we can do a portable electronic fence for all the cars that are, smash and grab. So I think that the crime statistics that somehow support the idea of electronic fences, we're kind of getting into that area where we have a solution looking for a problem, because I don't see electronic fences really reduce the larceny and theft that we have here. And again, I'm looking at what really makes kind of where I would not be in favor, and fences are inconsistent with the general plan major strategy to enhance city identity, and most importantly, the crime prevention through environmental design. I can't support the alternative recommendation that you were referring to adding it. I yield.
No,
Yeah.
but thank you for checking.
Prevent something we don't. I think leave this one to the business zoning, since I saw the gentleman sit there. So I think for us, it's important to, at least open the door.
I disagree 100% with Commissioner Biagini. Insurance cost is going sky high. You have to pass the cost of all of your losses to the consumer. So it isn't like they're going to be right in front of you. They're behind the other fence. So you have to, first of all, you have the intent that you're going to go break it in and then go over the other fence, the electric fence, in an industrial area. We're not going to put it down, El Mercado or anything like that. This is going to be all industrial areas. But at the same time,
Fence anywhere in the city.
no, I'm just wondering if any place that you have one should be around our power plant.
We are still respectful. Commissioner Bhatnagar?
Go ahead. So I think I actually appreciate what Commissioner Bruce has just said. Maybe years as we develop more experience with it, businesses ask for it, then we can consider allowing it in other zones. So that would be my.
The alternative
Specific.
suggests, so I hear what you're saying, but there'd have to be more belts and suspenders around where you might, a page of statistics that I really don't think apply to the argument. And knowing that there was a business owner over there and never had a theft.
I don't disagree with you about the statistics.
Yeah.
Right? I think this is who would need a fence because people are stealing catalytic converter with, and if they find wow, they electrified it, it's like, you know what, I'm going to go to the next town. And that's kind of where in industrial areas, because for me, the big thing is anything near if to introduce it, but I am in favor of it. Again, I would say your statistics applicable to these kinds of areas and how much are you really able to help out. But yeah, and I also see a lot of razor wire. And the moment I see that, so anyhow, if somebody wants to pay for it, I agree, because as a business owner, yeah, you know what, we're not insuring you anymore. So is this the total answer? I don't know, but should we try it?
By what the alternative says about where they are written.
So I'd like to tell you we're having technical issues with the YouTube stream. We are ready to clear up. Thank you.
Okay, noted. Staff, continue.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, and I'll, Commissioner Salam.
Going to install electric fences so that their Amazon packages don't get,
If we allow them.
yeah, something that is a general solution.
Thank you. Okay, I'll run away. Kids who don't read, people don't read on walks. They don't see the 30-foot separation of signs that is at but even with two fences, animals still go through, raccoons, I mean, alternate as well. But I understand that this might have a motion. I agree, it's a business, so there's vested interest. And I see that we, as opposed to an electric fence, which is why I was like, okay, maybe there's for children, for kids who don't pay attention, for people who don't, is easily penetrable. And for that reason, I feel that to go there, then to define, I looked up for the definition of electric fence. It's clear that it's either included or precluded. So there is no definition of electric fence today. Innovation, product will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Another 50 years, I hope not, but this zoning code could be there for another 50 years. And who knows, we might be in bubbles of the city. I will definitely encourage that in the code is not explicit, and even in our alternate language on the, I mean, a member of the public is interested. Staff, do you suggest we open it up for public comment briefly and close it, or just allow the gentleman to public comment, but albeit briefly? I will give 5 minutes, if at most, if you need to, but.
Foremost, I want to make sure that there's clarification regarding the safety aspect. This technology is specifically regulated. There are standards for safety, okay? The national safety in the draft that you have before you, but also California Civil Code section. This has been approved and adopted at the state level. This is back into is medically safe. Pets, wildlife, children, people with pacemakers, etc. At IEC's commission, the world's foremost experts, they're the ones that control the standards, the amount of power, the pulse, the duration, et cetera, to ensure that this technology, okay, going forward, should the Planning Commission and the city adopt an ordinance, it's the Food and Ag Code 17151. That's for animal control of cattle, bears, et cetera, goats. That standard points back at 17151 and says, we're not that. Both standards make a hard line distinction that general electric fencing to control a 2,000. So I just mentioned that certainly for your city attorney to make, as if you craft technology is medically safe. We have more than 700 installations across the state, 0 issues, no complaints, no issues with blight even. Once these go in, they hopefully somehow are outside of Santa Clara. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification, that there is no risk of harm to, and make a concerted effort to break through, cut through, or climb over a non-electrified perimeter barrier, fence, or wall first before you come in contact with the security fence. So it's no easy.
Questions? I think Commissioner Wang has a question to the member of the public.
No, actually
Okay, just for us.
comments.
I do.
Good question. It is a strong deterrent. Unfortunately, I've had to demonstrate it before, and it's certainly startling, get your attention. You know, you do not want to do it again, okay? But it is safe, okay, in the sense that just like a static shock doesn't harm you, that's the same reason why the static shock.
And is that pulse, or is that, okay, you touch
It
and you
is
get
pulsed.
up, but
It
then.
is every 1.3 seconds, it sends a less than a millisecond. There's no risk
And what's the human tolerance? Like, how do you define your human tolerance versus animal tolerance? How do you segregate your tolerance capability when you say safe?
I'm not a biomedical engineer, and I'm not an electrical
point
safety
exactly.
expert. But my point being is the state of California, if it was injurious to animals, humans, et cetera.
What about defibrillators?
That's exactly where I was pointing out. I was just looking over there and says, it's the,
Because
actually
there
the
are,
same.
I understand pacemakers, but I'm also well acquainted with.
People who
Doc is similar, would it be similar to a defib or a taser?
Well, not
Not even,
that.
not,
Not even close.
No, it's
not
not
even
that
close.
strong, trust
Not
me.
even close.
I
Having tested
I
it-
do appreciate, because I think my fellow commissioners make a good point about trying, but I have to be honest, I'm not convinced about the current
San Jose,
electrification.
Hayward, Oakland, San Francisco.
Okay,
they
you
all
can tell me
utilize
about all the other cities, but that's not convincing me, okay?
But I'm just pointing out, 7,000 volts, okay, is what's notated on our sign. The standard basically says that 10,000 volts or less.
Okay.
Sounds like a big number, but what makes that medically safe is the very short 0.3 seconds. So basically, it's
And how many amps? Or I should say milliamps, probably.
amps, it's less than 5 amps. But how many amps is dangerous? It has to do with the duration. The short duration is what establishes the current running through wires. It's just a tick.
Except for someone with a defibrillator.
very much appreciate the additional clarification. And I will state for the record, La Merida has the electrified fences, goes into in-depth details of fire department, the heights, the average where to be. But let me ask another question. We have periodic, so it's not a closed door, so let me put that out first for you. The zoning code as it sits today is, of course, a 50 that can be added over time, over its changes that are coming from state. Again, evidence to justify it, to the point where if you want to, that would come with an electrified fence. You know, I can see from commissioners here as well, there is an interest to encourage, and there is more, will need additional. Let's,
To close public hearing again.
yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Biagini, motion, and,
I think we have a
Commissioner Huang.
May I have comment? Okay.
Hold on.
So my two questions. The first question for staff, why we have this?
Changed it on the agenda before we did everything else. Is that what you're trying to say?
No. Bring it up?
Yeah, I mean, no. Why the staff, we have the zoning code put this item there?
A recent denial of an electric fence.
Can back you up once you start.
And so the reason that with general plan major strategies around look and feel of the, so just relying on the general plan as our guiding document, sharp glass on top of fences, electric perimeter security fences. So those are the range of things that we were recommending or are included as prohibited. So
I would also add that many cities in our neighboring areas about how they approach not having fencing that could have an appearance that, and where we've been with the proposal, but given the interest from the member of the public, easier for you, since it seemed as if maybe some members of the commission wanted to support that.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
just the cities in U.S. prevent this kind of fence.
no idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to say that now, the cities.
Okay, may I ask this gentleman, do you know how many % of the city they prevent the?
Okay, I'm going to encourage commission members to actually keep that questions to,
Can I ask a question?
I'll excuse once.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A simple clarifying question. You
Yeah.
can ask without reopening.
Yeah, the city in U.S. allow this electric fence.
I do not have a specific answer to that.
Do you know in the Bay Area is electric fence?
I named off a number of them. I mean, San Jose, Fremont, Hayward,
San Jose
Oakland,
does not.
San Francisco. Yes,
Does
they
it?
do.
I just looked it up. Cupertino does not.
Here to work on an ordinance to allow this technology. There are numerous cities that deem state law as adequate enough.
I'm going to clarify here, Munich Code, Chapter 17.24, prohibited in the city that is used for residential development and is not subject to development permits pursuant to section code. So it is explicit, and I don't know if
for residential use or zones.
But that's different than being in the code.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, looks like
Okay, thank you. Thank you, appreciate the
okay.
clarification. Sorry.
and this one in our city. We should not put this one in the ordinance. There is even a single business need that. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, we are ready for motions, and of course, the commission has the ability.
Rip off this item to don't allow it.
To the commission, there are 3 items for your approval tonight. One is to make a recommendation on the environmental. The second is to make a recommendation on the general plan amendment. And the third is to make a recommendation on the, there's a direction on the fencing, you do it in that last motion. So if you defer the fencing discussion perhaps till the third motion, that'd be great.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I would like to, okay, we have it up there.
So that one, we adopt an addendum to the city's general plan EIR for the zoning code update, which is the primary implementation tool of the general plan. 2,
Is there a second?
Well,
No, second already.
Okay, earlier, so I will fix that, so it says it was seconded by you, so I apologize. I don't know how to fix it right now. We're waiting for a vote, so Commissioner Bhatnagar, your vote, yes? And
Can read it?
So a move to adopt a resolution recommending that the city council adopt general plan text amendments related to the zoning codes, allowing medical uses in the high-intensity office/R&D designation, and clarifying the definition of floor area ratio.
Second?
second. Fourth.
Motion by Commissioner Crutchlow, second by Commissioner Biagini.
thank you, and the motion passed, thank you.
And Madam Chair, if I could jump in again here. Before you take any further action, unfortunately, there's a slight without the fencing. And it relates to what goes into effect and when. Initially, we were only going to, the past week or two, we decided that was a little too conservative, and we decided we're going to recommend adoption with an effect. While we were sitting here, I printed the right versions. They're sitting on my printer in my office of both versions of the resolution. But before you act, I would ask that I be given a chance to run down to the office, printed it, and it's only 2 minutes away.
go for
If you wouldn't mind.
No worries. We'll take a break.
taking a
for-
break.
Oh, a break.
Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute break then?
He brings the actual resolution,
Okay,
because it's connected to it.
Go get it.
for it.
Okay, so we will
Okay,
take.
we are taking a Thank you for the break. We have now the new of you is the resolution that acknowledges the ability electric fences added. If we take the motion on this, irrespective, I would still like to add additional, just share the distinction. If this motion fails, we will revert back to the original resolution.
So wrong, because that one also has the wrong effective date. So if the motion,
Electric fence resolution in front of us.
why don't you first seek consensus from the rest of the commission so that whatever motion goes forward can include your changes? Because it sounds
Commission members, I would like to add specific language for the to define ancillary threshold electric utilization for data centers currently in the zoning code, and add a caveat, ancillary threshold.
no, Chair, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm worried I'm going to lose everything you said if you keep going. Let me just read back what I heard.
Okay.
Number one, add the definition of tech park/warehouse.
Distribution?
No, Amazon warehouses is a component that has their
Totally misunderstood. I thought you were talking about
yeah.
Amazon distribution centers.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
That's why
you
when
literally
you said, call it data center/data warehouse, if
Okay.
that's,
Okay.
just because I think Amazon might be branding themselves as calling it like
whatever.
term for really getting to
It's
what
not a new
I'm
term,
saying.
it's an old term, but I would say that the one thing you want to do is clarify by the definition of electronic use. Electricity use, I'm sorry.
Is how are these enumerated uses different from each other? So language in the definition to say it includes all these things? Or we should,
I'll leave it to you. Or am I saying this right? Tech people, keep me honest.
No, you're not, but okay. I don't think it matters. I think, Lance, keep me straight here. At a certain threshold,
It comes to a conditional use permit.
yep.
Okay.
Some language where you can put in, it's like things known as, or maybe called data centers, data as these attributes, and it also commonly are.
Staff that contains a large number of networked computer servers, typically used by businesses and houses,
Exactly.
data centers,
Perfect.
tech parks? Is that, is,
I'm envisioning tech park to be slightly different
Oh,
from data
okay.
versus, it is different. Tech park in city, urban centers that actually become almost satellite towns.
Chair
might-
Kuru, can you just, I think we got the data center about that, or if that's part of the motion or not.
or
Yes, go
maybe what I'm factoring MP or something where we have a new set of uses that allows for these kinds of uses to locate together.
So I'm envisioning an Japanese that co-locate almost integrated in just on tech.
Understand what you're saying, but I'm just curious, in general, I mean, when a business goes in, no matter what it does, if it has a particular INEations do we have governing that kind of, usages and stuff like
What's
that?
the definition of that use?
Yeah, I mean, so,
we don't have any use definition. Pending data centers are going to be
Yeah.
pending for many years because we can't scale up fast enough for them. But this
here is, we want to make sure that whoever they are, if they're going to wind up wanting to use a ton of electricity, regardless of the way that, or what they're using it for, that we want to say, hey, yeah, it's,
Office R&D, but I want to make sure there's a clear delineation. Office is a general office, right? But do we consider NVIDIA an office?
And that we have a conforming district called high-intensity office R&D. So that is really probably the best place when people are trying to do R&D as well as have.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's a
okay,
good
I
way
mean,
of looking at it, that's really, that's really the city's, so just to sort of reflect that.
Okay. Commissioner Salem has additional insight.
Okay. Now, technology parks, I worked at Cisco. Cisco had entire building layers, rooms, that were server and more what we're trying to actually limit. And I think we have the best definition in the terms of the power utilization for man.
I think if we can make it along.
I'm sorry, with servers and data centers.
Yeah, I mean, but they are like Cisco, and what I used to call Cisco City over.
Yeah, Milpitas, right.
my point.
That's where I worked, so.
Yeah. So what you're going to do, but if you hit a certain threshold of square foot and electrical usage, It's conditional.
Incredibly difficult when somebody comes to the counter and says, what can I do on my property? And we say, we don't know what the electrical load is with your use. Let's really dissect that and and they're trying to build something, or this is something that I have to.
It's a level of threshold, because I can guarantee you, people like Cisco, NVIDIA, and the rest of people who make data centers know very well what their usage is going to be, because it's been the biggest problem for data centers for years, not decades exactly, because I've worked in that. We should maybe reevaluate this and go over this a little bit more and bring it up at another session?
Well, I do feel your general request of land use, which is really what the zoning code is. There are some challenges that I personally see about how we can implement power usage, which I've never seen in any zoning code ever. Are you going to need a use permit? There's just a lot more in terms of thinking through the implementation that I just wanted you to be aware of when you're doing this. And I know where it comes to me and we probably can narrow it, but when you broaden it, it becomes a lot more.
Not complicating things. What we're trying to do that the commissioners have brought up is, well, and build one. That's what for the last few years, that's what has been happening. The data centers just popping up left and right without, telling anybody else, what the power is, how big they're going to be. It's like, and then we can make our decision.
And I think that your discussion around data centers is very tangible, and we can implement something like that. Where I'm expressing use or conditional use, that's going to create a lot of challenges for us to implement. But I think for a use like data centers, that's a very limited type of use, and we certainly can get that kind of.
And I was a land use planner too. It's very hard to give that level of answer to somebody who's just walking through the door finding out. But is there an actual distinction in,
Kinko seems to really meet the definition of a business support center.
But what about offices?
Yeah, offices, I would think that generally speaking, a tech company, whether or not they are, I don't know, a different field, financial services, right? It's a generic office use. What we created a zoning district for is the recognition that we have a lot of tech in our area, and we needed a zoning district that would support the fact that mostly on a site.
That's exactly what I needed. So the high-intensity office R&D would capture versions of app. So are we all clear that that definition is taken care of, and then we just focus on the CUP for data centers that exceed ancillary and are standalone? Okay. Moving now to the billboards.
I'd need you to clarify again. So
I will give you my notes. How about that cheat sheet?
I just want to make sure 2 is to change standalone data centers from a permitted use to a conditionally permitted use in the LORD and HORD zones in table 212.
Technically, that would be yes.
But ancillary
density.
Okay.
But it would have exceeded its ancillary data center as well.
Okay.
So ancillary data centers below the square footage and kilowatt thresholds would be permitted.
So the question out by right, or is that conditional use permit?
Currently, it's permitted.
By right. So an
By right.
NVIDIA could be built by right without ever coming to Planning Commission. No?
But not just if it's already zoned that. You keep saying NVIDIA. Aren't we talking about data centers? I'm sorry.
I know. I'm talking high-intensity office.
Office?
Yeah,
It's an office that has
It's
a lot of,
Permitted.
by right.
by right.
That's logic.
It's the aesthetics. Where do we see aesthetics of these massive projects come through review if it's permitted by right?
Well, one thing the zoning ordinance does not change is the current architectural review process.
Okay.
So a project of that size, a review hearing, if it's that size, if it's large,
Okay.
yes. But the use itself is permitted. Yeah, they could just go to architectural review,
But,
an architectural
Yes.
public hearing
okay.
process.
We're looking at the use. We're not looking at the use then. We're looking at the building, the form. Does it adhere to setbacks? Is it aesthetic?
Still have discretion when it comes to architecture. We can say no if it's ugly.
Right, but that has nothing to do with what they do inside of it. Like, you say
Correct.
the outside, right?
As proposed, data centers are currently permitted by right, and so are,
High-intensity offices.
yes. You can change.
I believe you're trying to make it so that they're conditional uses. And I
Data centers
believe that
use.
you're trying to define ancillary, have a definition of ancillary, footage of square footage, and also an electrical load requirement threshold for what ancillary is.
Ancillary.
Would be a conditional use permit.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I think this horse is officially.
I don't think,
So it is actually in your, proposed motion, it is a request to staff to fill in the blanks
Exactly.
about the square footage
you can
and
do
the
what
electrical load.
you think is, yeah, you got the general
We'll put the
gist.
threshold at 2, I'll be
Data
nice.
centers based on abacuses.
Okay, let me move on. I still have more. Okay, billboards, replace, and also the imposition, so I'm going to say, shall be relocated to 100 feet from edge of right-of-way. The concerns.
Yeah, they already have the property. You cannot move these giant billboards. Those are built-in structures.
Yeah, but remind me, the 14 billboards that are along 101, are they digital billboards?
To remove billboards.
That's my point.
Add a billboard.
So
And
a
so a
replacement.
replacement, a new billboard, which would be part of a,
We should move them at least, and I'm only focused on 101.
You have 2 poles in here.
Because they're considered a
Xander?
safety hazard for drivers when they,
move-
along 101, there are no billboards allowed. We're
Well,
the
that's what
only
she's
city that
asking.
still allows
If
it
you-
because
If you're
it's
going to change it
grandfathered
out,
in.
like put an electric one in and change it out, then it has to be moved. Exactly. And it's getting late, right?
It's never moved.
But if they wanted to move this, then I'm
They
saying,
won't have to, they don't have to do that.
yeah.
Because this land here, they only have a certain amount of land. And they can't.
Board relocation agreement, there are lighting limitations that are put into it, yes.
And is there, and I'm going to go on a limb here, but would that be too much to say? But what about the flashing changes? The lumen could be okay.
That's content.
It's the strobe effect.
Strobe effect is measured in lumens of light, which is brightness.
Okay, whatever makes sense.
And then they change it.
Yeah.
Or the other ones, which I really hate, is they're constantly changing.
Exactly.
And that's the ones that I really hate, because it's a distraction. It's a very bad distraction, so, but, okay, anyway.
Okay. Well, I was suggesting you bring up your issues before we get to the motion on the reso, because I thought there was consensus on the things you had brought up. I'm not sure we're at X number of years ago. Regrettably, I'm having a little trouble pulling it up on
Maybe
the
then we just
spot.
reference that language on billboards to say, replacement billboards shall adhere to city policy, blah.
And if I'm not mistaken, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was last revised in 2011. And
On billboards, replacement billboards, I don't care if it has 100 feet, but the lumens not exceed a
I
human,
don't know what the number is.
okay, whatever
You-
is the, which Greater America was for a long time. Yeah, I'm just going through consensus. We haven't even gone through recommendation yet. We haven't even made that.
on lumens for billboards in the vicinity of Freeway 101 or anywhere?
Or along 101, along 101.
Oh, that's what
And
I-
you can say within 100 feet of right-of-way along 101.
That's where,
You can't go above a certain amount of lumens. I don't know what it is offhand. There aren't any digital billboards along El Camino Real right now, are there?
No, there isn't.
Ad. That's different from a billboard, which displays things unrelated to
The site.
the site. So you're talking about the on-site sign, whether,
don't remember it being electronic.
No, they're not electronic, but if they want to convert it to electronic,
Oh.
that's what I'm saying. If there's going to be
I
restrictions.
saw that, that's why I was,
ordinance. Okay. I can, that may already be in the new code. I can,
candle unit, it just defines by a source of light equal to 1 lumen incident per square foot. So we have a foot candle as a definition. Okay, moving on. Since it was brought up, should we, as a commission, now consider recommending equivalent to the San Mateo? Let's
do it.
Okay,
Regulations of San Mateo.
Fair and just.
ask,
Well,
yeah,
we say, wait,
on ADUs.
ADUs get it, but I mean, I thought,
ADUs, on the use of ADUs for short-term rentals.
Right.
Which ADUs can be up to 150 square feet anyway.
Used for short-term rental. The way that the code is currently drafted, it says that ADUs are considered unhosted, which means that they would only be allowed to be utilized for 90.
Okay.
How you want to, where you want to go, I just want to clarify what's drafted and what San Mateo's.
Very helpful. So, Commission members, I don't know if you picked it up, but it was one of the things that I had in my mind, but our code,
You could do it,
maximum 90 days.
maximum.
90 days through the whole year, not 90 days at a time during the.
In the
90
aggregate.
days for the whole year, 3
So I
times.
think it out for 90 days a year. It'll be a hard,
No, what you would do is you would not tell anybody, and
Exactly.
then a
Because
particular
90 days,
commissioner
that's why
might
the
rat you out, but
well, so if you prohibit it and people do it without telling you, you're in the same position.
Zero. May I go back to Commissioner Booza's brightness? It's currently in the draft ordinance. It's on page 3-86 of the November. Electronic digital display message sign cannot exceed a maximum illumination of 5,000 nits, where nits are measured from the sign's face. There's requirements for a dimmer control, so it's easy to dim them if they're too bright. There's also a brightness review. Each electronic digital message sign is surrounding property. So I would suggest we probably already
Have that.
address that
Can we
issue.
translate that language to billboards?
Well, this section on press about
Okay,
that.
okay, perfect. So we took care of that, no need to change anything then. And then on the San Mateo, it's my only reference right now, but commission members, do you have a way of clarifying consensus before I put it into a motion? Days for a year. Okay. Commissioner Salem.
Yeah, I think what you need to do is understand what they were attempting to do. They were placing safeguards against one personal little commercial property that you're going to rent out every weekend to somebody else, or for parties or whatever.
it was to address the shortage of,
To do is limit absolutely the abuse of ADUs by building more than one ADU to now become short-term rental for 90 days plus 90 days, and then you won't have an actual control.
right, and I think the enforcement of that's going to be ridiculously hard.
Okay.
To help our fellow commissioner is to provide a measurable way to actually address it if it is a complaint. So I'm sure if somebody under the table decides to rent it out to somebody different, that they are having raucous parties every weekend, that's a different category, and you need to be able to.
And who's really the policing from the neighbor perspective?
But, well, your thing against them, I think that the goal of it is to affordable housing, and I can't see that 90 days, 30 days, 120, yeah.
That's the intent of the whole thing,
Yeah.
the ADUs.
Okay.
It's not going to solve the problem.
I'm sensing a
Yeah,
consensus.
consensus.
Okay,
To
thank you.
keep the 90 days or to go to zero?
No, to go zero, San Mateo language.
0 days. Okay.
Restriction on use of ADUs for short-term rentals, period. Because I removed billboards and clarifications. Any concern with these two being added to either and more of the motions?
Electrified fencing.
Let me put you this way. I'm looking at doing a friendly amendment to.
No, but I'm saying, what I clarified is irrespective of which would be the friendly amendment, with the electric fence, without the electric fence, the two additional,
Further. First, clarify the definition of data center to include data warehouses.
That's in here.
Second, add additional details to section 18.6, alone data centers from a permitted use to a conditionally permitted use in the LORD, HORD, LI, and HI zones in Table 2.
hold on, Rena has a doubt.
Well, no, I just didn't hear the last sentence.
Ancillary data centers below the square footage and kilowatt thresholds would be permitted, not conditionally permitted. And then the San Mateo, get it?
Got it?
Got it.
Thank you for your indulgence.
You're the best. And so now we go to the resolution. Yes, Commissioner Wang, please read off for the record.
Okay.
It's there up.
Oh, yeah. Okay. After the zoning code update and give direction to the staff to prepare a zoning code map for future adoption and further recommending that select single-family districts site planning standards, standards for specific land use, nonconformities, permit processing procedures, zoning code administration, definitions, and short-term rental regulations, subject to a 9-month grace period.
I'll second.
Or electric fencing. And with the language already agreed to by consensus of this commission related to the issues we discussed earlier.
What number is that?
Data centers and
You got it. Okay.
ADUs.
Okay.
With a friendly amendment.
I have a
proposed.
friendly amendment on
And
the
the resolution is specifically for
that has-
electric.
The electric fencing resolution before you is just for fencing in industrial districts.
Correct.
Right.
Apologies, Commissioner, please proceed with your amendment.
Okay, friendly amendment. When I look at page 6 of 5, that was interesting. It's okay. On the resolution that has 7 pages of 5. So I look at number 8, because that's, I think,
My copy of it.
what I had a concern about. Monitored perimeter security fence systems shall only be permitted on property zoned light industrial and heavy industrial. Here's my concern. I don't want it near mini malls, I don't want it near childcare centers, and that would be a commercial land use designation, right? So I wouldn't have to worry about that being near mini malls or childcare centers. Am I correct?
It's just
That's what I thought.
industrials and.
Because it's
light
industrial. And you don't have mini malls in light industrial areas, do you?
You might have it adjacent. Do you have commercial zones next to industrial zones ever?
Let
I
me,
mean,
let me
it's
see if
probably
I can
pretty
make this
rare.
more clear. I'm a little concerned about the changing things that happen in Sacramento, but I think we're getting real close to something we can all agree on. What I want to ensure, right now, I know there's new laws that allow residential development with commercial land use designations. There's also language about emergency shelters, which I don't know if that's available, emergency shelter in a light industrial or heavy industrial area. I'm betting it is.
It will be under our new code.
Okay, well, I want to put belts and suspenders around that say electronic fencing is not permitted near
They want to use.
residential areas.
Emergency shelter can come after the security fence is installed.
May I suggest an analogy?
Do you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get it to where there isn't going to be an exception in the law that now says, hey, let's convert this old building into a residential center and ow.
So effectively, if I have a street dividing one side commercial, one side residential, you would say you're too close.
I'm almost thinking there's got to be within a half mile. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a way of
That would
doing
be
it.
technically making it
Impossible?
possible, I think.
Well, then how do we do it so we protect against electronic fencing near
Well,
Keep reminding me of that.
Okay, I'll give you an example, okay?
Okay, all right.
An example where you're doing, just to clarify.
All right.
Laurelwood Road, okay? Laurelwood Road we have is light industrial.
Okay.
Considered to be light industrial.
Not real familiar with it, but okay.
Okay, it's a frontage road.
Okay.
You have the hotel, the U-Haul place. Okay, hotel is residential. True or false?
Well, I would,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then further down, after the storage place, there's a little motel in there. But
Yeah.
it's still within light industrial. So you see, there's already places like that.
I see exactly what you're saying,
Yeah.
but how is there, oh God, here we go.
You don't,
There's
it's
no-
pretty hard to do that, what you want to do. I see your
Yeah.
point, but it's almost impossible to do it.
Would it
Because
make,
U-Haul will probably want to have a
Want to
a
have it
fence.
next to a, yeah.
The hotel. You got it.
so would
So
it
do
make
they have
sense
to-
to say conditional, it would have to be
That's what I'm
conditional?
thinking.
Conditional Inc., so we're going to just throw everything away.
No,
Just put a little
no.
restriction here and
So
there.
is this,
No.
let's do it another way. If this resolution were to pass, industrial, is this allowed by right now, or is this conditional use permit?
There we go.
No, once you build it, that's
Electric
it.
fencing?
No.
Number
If
8.
we are doing, if this resolution comes forward, that an electric, so let me go then this way. One, we need a definition of electric fence added to our actual definitions. Two, now we have an actual, almost, I would say, use classification on properties that are allowed with electric fences, which is primarily industrial. But let's say it's a tech park in an industrial, and they want to do an electric fence. Is that allowed by right, or is that a conditional use permit?
Yeah, thank you.
So electric fences under the current code that's in the resolution or the current code amendment would be a permitted use, and it would be only in the light and heavy industrial zoning districts.
So allowed by right, so you won't be able to gauge whether this project has impact to a residential or an actual, non-industrial
Is there any way of
Use.
dealing with that?
conditional use permit.
Well, I mean, you could just put in a simple locational restriction. We have, for instance, an anti-skid row chapter that talks about you can't put tattoo parlors or check cashing stores or pawn shops or a variety of other uses within 500 feet of hotels and motels, school property lines, child daycare centers, or any parcel zoned single-family residential or mixed use. So you could put in some sort of locational restriction, model it after the Skid Row
We
language.
could, or could we do a conditional use permit? Because I could
Yes.
see where, if it was someplace where you didn't have essentially residential use, I wouldn't have such an issue with it.
Here's,
But if it is, I would. So
Here's an
that's
option.
conditional use permit.
if a property owner wants to build an electric fence, they would come in through a conditional use permit.
Right.
If it is just the property with its allowed use in the particular zone, it can be allowed by right.
I want conditional use permit. That's a safety issue for me.
For if it has an electric fence.
Correct, correct.
The definition, I think, should align with this California Civil Code, which is, I believe, Civil Code 835.
Don't we already define it?
Electrified security fence.
Yeah, I think there is.
They already define it and stuff, and I think it needs to line up with them.
Yeah, because
Right here.
the conditional use permit would allow us to evaluate the immediate geography, the immediate usage around the electric fence, and it will also put people on point for the surrounding changes of uses. Today it might be industrial, tomorrow it can become a motel.
And the bottom line is, it gives us an opportunity to evaluate how well it works, how well it doesn't work.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
at some other point, we can always make it
Yeah.
by right.
Yes, at future.
I prefer the conditional use because I'm just leery of how things can change down the road. Whether it moves from electric to some version of AI or electronic or God knows what isn't even on the planning boards now.
Yeah.
The concern I have is safety with electric. So yes, conditional use permit, however we say that, would that be an okay?
Yeah, sure. I think it's okay.
You'll see every one of them. How about that? It'll make you feel good.
Yeah. I mean,
Nancy, tell me, you happy?
Okay.
Well, we came to consensus, I think so.
There you go.
May
Better
I
than the
ask-
Congress.
My concerns and his were both met, and yours
Yeah.
too, I hope.
Yep,
Okay?
I like it.
All right.
May I ask for
Okay.
clarification? The friendly amendment would add the conditional use permit requirement to subsection E of the section that's being modified, which is 18.34.060. So as drafted, the language says the design, construction, and use of a monitored perimeter security fence system shall be allowed, subject to the following requirements. We would modify it to say shall be allowed with a conditional use permit, subject to the following requirements.
Sounds good to me.
That's where we'll add the language.
Yep.
Everybody happy?
You're
We don't have to
forgiven for
mention-
page, you're forgiven for page 6 of
Civil
5.
code already takes precedence anyway, right? So that we don't have to,
We,
Write that in our-
yeah, we do have IEC standards listed in the ordinance that, I mean, this was.
I mean, what I would only do is make sure that we use similar language, like, again, you know, they call it electrified security fence, that we use similar language so that we're in alignment with.
It does mirror Civil Code 835. Civil Code 835B2 says that the fence meets the 2006 international standards of IEC 60335, and our ordinance says that electrified fencing is subject to the following requirements, IEC standard number 60335. So it uses the same language.
Perfect.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, finish your thought, please.
I would just ask for your giving me the discretion to verify that we meet all of the requirements of 835 when I take this to council.
Yeah, because there is a part in here about the height of the fence shall not exceed 10 feet or 2 feet higher than an existing perimeter fence, which obviously we don't have that. We have a different height restriction, right?
But we can be more restrictive.
Exactly,
I see.
exactly.
I see what you're saying. We will.
So you're already saying, I'm going to look at this, make sure that when I give it to council, that I've already made sure everything matches with.
I will make sure that
More
we
restrictive.
are not being any less restrictive than what state law provides. It will meet the definition of what a fence, electrified fence is under state law,
Perfect.
but have the height limitations.
You have it already here, number 6 is 10 feet. You have it ready.
Right. This just state law allows for something else, or 2 feet higher than an existing, which could make it 12 feet. I don't think you want 12 feet. So
I keep the 10 feet,
10 feet.
if at all. Okay, 6 feet is ideal, just for context. But anyway, it's coming through a CUP, so we'll deal with it then.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Huang with added language that has been on record by our attorney. I need a second.
Second.
I really show respect to Nancy. Yeah,
He's agreeing to my friendly amendment.
yeah, I really show respect.
So was that a second
Yes.
of his
Motion
motion?
and a
Oh,
second. That was just-
She was also seconding?
No, motion and a
I
second
see.
by Commissioner Boozer.
Thank you.
Go ahead and cast your vote, please.
Oh, it's not staff recommendation 3 for the record. It's the alternate one, which is like
Aren't we approving
No, it's
staff
number three.
recommendation
Negative,
3
negative.
with,
It isn't?
but that's what they've said.
But the resolution is like, well, just for the record, we'll make sure it's right tomorrow. It's like alternative
Oh, okay, it's the
3.
alternative staff recommendation 3.
Yes.
Staff recommendation 3.
Would you want to state for the record again, Commissioner Huang, this one? Sorry, that was a test, but okay, now go.
Read it again. Okay.
No,
Just adopt the resolution.
You don't need to? You don't want us to?
Yeah. Okay.
We will note for the
That's
record
what we need. Yeah.
that Commissioner Wang was referring to alternative 3 that includes the additional language regarding electric
Okay.
perimeter security fencing.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
I don't know why it didn't,
Yes, Commissioner Boozer
I
is,
don't know why that didn't show up, but we'll get that changed, sorry.
it's okay.
I would have, but you beat.
Commissioner Bhatnagar?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Buza?
Yes.
Very good, thank you, and the motion passed, thank you.
Congratulations. We'll just see you more often now.
Well, it's how we make recommendations.
Listen to love by right. Okay. With that excited moment of zoning code update,
Move to remove Commissioner Crutchlow.
I second.
Oh, that was good.
all right, we're having too much fun. With that, we are going to move to the next order of items, if I can call this out correctly. I am going to go to section reports of commission, board, liaison, and committee members.
Lance?
Announcements and other items. I will just say Happy Diwali to the Indian diaspora and everybody who wants to celebrate.
Yep.
Diwali is a festival of lights, but it has a universal message of spreading love, light, happiness, prosperity, and share it with those lesser.
I love it.
I second that.
You're welcome. There you go. Okay,
Electric lights?
that's different. This is fireworks, but okay.
I want to join that. Throw paint on
Commissioner, any other announcements before I move on? Okay. Commissioner, travel training reports, request to attend trainings. Any,
Notify me that he will not be attending. Commissioner Crutchlow, I still am waiting to hear from you.
I will not be attending.
Okay, so we do not have any commissioners attending the CEQA conference in December.
CEQA conference or California APA? I mean, APA National, CEQA?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
This is when you attended last year, the one in San
Yes.
Francisco? Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you, okay. All right, at some other day, some other moment for CEQA training. Maybe staff can do a CEQA training for us someday. You know, do a study session on CEQA, give us the latest, greatest changes, some state laws. I know today's not your.
If you're referring to the annual legislative update I usually provide to the commission, I did pencil that into my calendar for this January. There's a January 6th meeting that seems really ambitious, but there's also a January 30th or 31st meeting in this chambers.
Okay, just hang a little more on CEQA there, so that we just can't.
You'd like heavy on the CEQA. Well, I mean, in all seriousness, you'd like a separate CEQA presentation, or just, you say?
It's up to you, depending on how you want to submit your homework.
I'll talk about it with planning
Okay, I figured, that's why I gave you the
Thank
leeway.
you for the input.
Okay, some point of time. Director of Community Development reports.
Yeah, so in terms of, I think we subdivide this, thank you, I have the agenda here in
budgets.
front of me. So Elizabeth, I don't know if you have a budget update in front of you?
It's the same amount you had last time, which was $15,258. So now's a good time to strategize and think about how you want to spend your funds, whether it be for trainings or, because the budget will end at the end of June.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any upcoming agenda items? Rena?
Our next meeting on December 6th has a fair number of items, full agenda, or maybe something relatively light. There is time that we've carved out for a strategic planning session for the commissioners in order for you to prepare for your joint city council dinner, which is on January 16th.
Okay.
So I am kind of hoping for you that some of these things are not able to time out for the next meeting, so you have more time for your strategic planning session. But there is a possibility that a couple items which may involve community input would be brought forward at that meeting as well. So just be prepared to be here on December 6th. And then our next agenda item, a Mills Act was approved by the City Council on Homestead Road at 2566 Homestead Road on November 7th. And then last night, the City Council approved funding through a loan for 1601 Civic Center Drive. That's the 106-unit charities housing project, affordable housing project, just across the street from City Hall here. So that's a loan of approximately $5 million, lieu fees, and it is a loan, so it would be paid back over time. Also, that action included the release of an indenture. Interesting enough, that property was sort of part of the Civic Center master plan, and so it had kind of prohibited really the full utilization of the site, just because it had kind of a more bucolic, low intensity in vision for the property. So that indenture was lifted in order to allow the property to move forward with the full build-out of an affordable project. So that happened last night, but those were the two things that the City Council took action on since you last met.
Nice, thank you. And do you know when the downtown plan will go to city?
Yes. Yeah, so it is going on December 5th to City Council, and we do have a special hearing by the City Council that we're anticipating bringing the zoning code forward by December 19th. So we're hoping both of those things move forward by the end of the year.
Excellent, thank you. Anything else for the good of the order?
Quick question regarding a project that was brought to the Planning Commission in the quad area, building a multi-story building at the edge of the quad that went to council, and then council took some action to send it back to the
Maybe the
people.
950 Monroe Street project? Yeah. So are you asking for an update?
Yes.
Yeah, so the action that council took that night was for the applicant to go get more feedback and consensus from the community and bring back a revised proposal. The applicant is aware that the downtown plan's moving forward on December 5th, and they haven't resubmitted their application. So we are waiting. Really, the next step is in their court. So that's where that's at. We don't have a resubmitted revised set of plans or project.
Is there normally a timeline for something like that? Like, can somebody postpone it indefinitely, or is there a point where it's like, yeah, it's too late, you have to do everything from the beginning?
You cannot postpone it indefinitely, right? But I think we would be looking at least 6 months to a year of no action before something like that would be considered.
Looking for extensions because the cost every month gets higher.
Okay, Commissioner Biagin, do you have a last question
No, I was just going
staff.
to make,
on the
No.
project? Okay,
I was just going to make a motion to adjourn.
okay. I'd like to see a no.
I bet there's no objections.
Thank you, consensus
that one.
adjourned
Yep.
at 9:40.
But I wasn't going to ask that